Welcome, everybody, to an all-new episode of Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. I'm Brian Ciano. Thank you so much for joining us. To take our weekly look at everything going on in the world of combat sports, we're going to hit all over the map here. We got lots of stuff going on. Next segment, we're going to catch up with former lightweight and welterweight champion of the BKFC, Luis Baboon Palomino, now looking to get back into action for the first time in a year and get his name back in that title contention, trying to get that belt that he had taken from him at lightweight when he takes on Howard H.T. Davis. We'll catch up with him, see how he's doing and the changes that he's made in preparation for this tough opponent he's going to be facing. We'll also talk at the end of the show to PFL light heavyweight Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis, who is going to be part of this PFL tournament here for the light heavyweights. That's right, we said last week all we had left were the big boys, the light heavies and the heavies. We're going to break down those rosters as well later in the show and then talk to Mr. Wonderful about being part of that tournament and what he thinks of, being part of the PFL now, the longtime UFC and Bellator fighter. We will also meet for the first time the Lights Out Extreme Fighting strawweight Ashley Thiner, who's going to be making her Lights Out Extreme Fighting debut coming up at the end of this month, an LXF 23. Only her second pro fight. First pro fight was in Bellator. Now she's going over to Lights Out Extreme Fighting with the demise of Bellator, staying a little closer to home for this one. We'll talk to her about her second pro fight and how she's got here, her background in Muay Thai, and all the things that have made her the fighter that she is coming into this matchup. We will also break down later on the big fight between Tank Davis and Lamont Roach Jr., of course, the controversial fight. Boy, do I have some words for that referee when we get into that later in the show. And as I said, we'll also break down the light heavyweight and heavyweight rosters for this upcoming PFL tournament season. But first, let's get into the action we saw last week with the BKFC, because we had a fight card out there in Albuquerque. That's right, almost a home away from home for the BKFC over the last couple of years, ever since they broke into New Mexico. Albuquerque, huge fight area, as we've always talked about, for MMA, and now for the BKFC with a lot of these fighters. You go up and down that card, there was someone from that area, and many of them did not disappoint. Let's first go with the headlining main event, and that was Keith the Rockstar Richardson versus Usmanov, Vexad Usmanov, the 29-year-old from Tajikistan who lives in New Mexico. Was 1-1 in the BKFC, now 2-1 as he gets the victory over Rockstar Richardson, the former bantamweight title holder, who now falls to 5-2 in the BKFC. We thought Richardson was going to get this in the third round. He looked strong against Larimore in his comeback fight last December, but Usmanov was just too much to bear for him. Gets a first-round KO victory less than a minute in. There were some questionable issues here for me with, that first knockdown, as you saw. Richardson goes down, gets hit again as he's trying to get back up. I mean, this is supposed to be, boxing rules, and that the guy touches, we get a standing 8 count. Ref didn't get in there quick enough. Took a couple more shots before he got knocked down again and got back up, but was not right, was not the same, and Usmanov came in there and blasted him a little bit more. Continues to unload towards the end of that first round against the ropes, goes down, and Usmanov even tried to jump on him and beat him up some more on the second knockdown, but the ref at least jumped in the middle of that one and kept him from doing more damage, but calls it off immediately, does not give Keith Richardson the chance to get back and see if he can recover more. Didn't look like he was right ever since that first one, so I don't give too much blame on the ref there. But Usmanov now coming in there getting over 500, but he's got some big aspirations. Listen to him after the fight.
Finally, I'm going to say Conor BKFC, guys, number 1 bantamweight. I kill him. I'm going to win. I won't fight for a title shot. I will kill that guy from Cuba.
Calling out Blas, getting right into it, getting his, his second win and thinking that he can go right for the champ. But I mean, reasoning isn't completely wrong there in that you beat the number 1 guy. Who else is there to fight except the one above him? We'll see if he gets that shot. Showing some good grit there. We'll see if he is tough enough to face Blas, who just steamrolled through everybody in that division on his way to that title, including Rockstar Richardson. Then the co-main event, you had a light heavyweight between Donald Sanchez, a local guy, against Harrison Aiken. Aiken, tough dude, 35-year-old from Georgia. Now falls to 1-1 the BKFC and 3-4 in bare knuckle overall after he got the win in December. Now loses to Sanchez, a 20-year vet who's now 4-1 in the BKFC. Sanchez gets we thought he'd get a second round KO. It was almost done in the first round, but credit to Aiken, the guy hung on. It goes all 5 rounds. Sanchez gets unanimous decision, 49-43 on 2 judges' scorecards, 48-44 on another. He got 2 knockdowns in that first round to get the 10-7 round. It looked like it was all over but the shouting. Surprised that Aiken was able to hang in, but he did. Things kind of slowed down over the rest of the fight there in 2 and 3 and 4. Sanchez gets another knockdown to get a 10-8 round, so it's clear that all he has to do is wait till the end, still throw some punches. He's not a guy to back down and, a guy to just coast on his bicycle until the end of the fight. Although Aiken didn't really come out as strong as I would expect in the 5th round or even after, the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, because when you get knocked down twice in the 1st, you pretty much know it's finished or be done in that fight. Does not get it at any point, does not turn it up to the level that he really need to. Donald Sanchez is able to get a unanimous decision victory. A great performance by him. Not his strongest one. I thought that he's been better at times, but of course this was at light heavyweight. He said in the post-fight that he's more of a middleweight, and he wants to go back to that division. And again, fight somebody that he's been calling out for a while and has not gotten that shot at yet.
Let's do this. How many times do I got to say it? Feldman, give it to me already. It was supposed to be here at Tingley, and we did this instead. Thank you for my guy, but Mundell, that belt is mine. Let's go. Come on. I got to say it again. Let's go. All right.
As you hear, calling out the Redneck Mundell, the champion in the middleweight division. We will see if that is a fight that could be, put together after this one. I mean, the record is showing that this guy is a tough dude, one of the best, on a 4-fight win streak after losing that first fight. So he doesn't have much time left to get that title shot. If it's going to happen, it's got to happen soon. Let's see if he gets his shot or if someone else jumps the line. If Mike Perry ever decides to fight for the real belt in the BKFC, all that will remain to be seen. There's supposed to be a heavyweight fight between Braxton Smith and Manuel Otero. We talked to Braxton last week before that fight. Unfortunately, that one falls apart as Otero pulls out of the fight. We were not sure why, if there was an injury that we haven't heard about or what the reasoning was, but that unfortunately goes by the wayside. Braxton Smith, I saw on social media, we're talking to him about cutting weight. He's saying he will fight at 205 his next fight. He's going down to cruiserweight, so it might take a little bit of time to lose that extra 30, 40 pounds that he's carrying with all that muscle. We'll see when we get him back in the squared circle. Then at welterweight, you had Felipe Chavez versus Derek Finley. This one did not go in favor of the hometown guy. Chavez, the 41-year-old from New Mexico, Nightmare Sanchez's cousin. He was 2-1 in the BKFC, was 2-0. Now it's 2-1. Finley, 3-2 in the BKFC, has won 3 in a row after getting the win here. We thought it'd be a 4th round stoppage. He gets a 2nd round stoppage. Just gets it off before the bell, too. There is no being saved by the bell in the BKFC, and this one certainly proved it. Chavez, I thought, had a good first round, even into the 2nd round for a lot of time. He was using his size, was kind of getting on Finley, doing a lot of grappling, a lot of, clutching, holding him, using that extra weight to, put him in against the ropes and get little short shots. Finley was getting some good body work in there, but I thought Chavez was still controlling the fight a little bit more. But then, right before the end of the round there, Finley lands a low blow, so they take a little break about 20 seconds before the end of the round. And then once they come back, Finley makes use of it. As Chavez comes forward, comes after him, Finley finally takes that weight, turns it, shoves him against the ropes, lands a couple big lefts that puts Chavez to the ground, ends it with a right, and that is the end of the fight as Chavez does not even get back up. 159, just had to last another couple seconds before he gets the bell, but that is not the case as Finley puts him to the mat, and that is the end of the fight. Finley thanks everybody for the opportunities. Sounds like he's so grateful to be part of the BKFC, but says he wants a big name. He says he's the biggest threat in the division and wants a big name for his next fight with the BKFC, and we will see if he gets that opportunity. And the last fight we'll touch on before we get out of here, fight of the night, absolute battle, maybe even fight of the year, early contender for that, maybe a clear winner already. Eric Dodson versus Van Vo. Vo was 1-3 coming in this, now 1-4. Eric Dodson, Thuggy Bear, was 3-2 in the BKFC, moves up to 4-2, but this was not a dominant performance by him. He gets a 3rd round TKO. There were a ton of knockdowns in this one, a total of 9 by my count. Could have been less. Vo got called against the ropes as a knockdown a couple times, but Dodson dropped left and right over and over again. You had 5 knockdowns just in the first round between these two guys. Vo got the better of it. Round 2, Vo got a couple more knockdowns. In the end, though, Dodson in the 3rd round, right away, 11 seconds in, a big right, comes forward, keeps pummeling Vo. Refs jumps in and saves him for the end of that fight, and Thuggy Bear gets another victory in the BKFC.
Which is a great place to be. Are you in the locker room, like you giving like the Any Given Sunday Inches Al Pacino speech? Are we there yet?
Oh yeah, I think we've been there. We're gonna have a long talk with Rob today about the 99-199 issue from last week. Like I just don't get how he is still employed. We got to talk to ownership about that one.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Possible that while every other state is trying to copy New York and get that 51% tax on sports betting, is it possible that New York will actually lower their taxes? That's surprising.
Question is, of course, well, what sports books could go there? I mean, we're already at 9 that are the biggest ones out there in the market. So, I mean, who are you really missing?
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Remember when everyone was upset about NIL? You know what NIL did? Make sure Cooper Flag wasn't playing with the G League Ignite. That's good for us. That's good for college basketball. When the best players are actually playing college basketball.
You're going to get battle tested. And it doesn't matter, Kevin, if you're at home or on the road. If you don't come ready to play in the SEC, you're going home with an L.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. And we continue to talk about the BKFC, and we go from fights that we just saw to ones we're going to see later on this month. It is going to be another stacked card down in Hollywood, Florida, as it always is. Whenever they go down there, they load it up, and we're going to see some of the Miami area's finest once again, this time going against each other. March 27th, headline by Luis Palomino versus Howard H.D. Davis at lightweight. I mean, this one stacks from top to bottom. You got plenty of other great fights as well. You got Perdomo against Aurelius at heavyweight. You got Ibarola and Velasquez there fighting at bantamweight, maybe even a title eliminator there. But as we said, two of the best, two guys who are constantly in the title picture. One that held on to titles for a long time, the BKFC, and that is Luis Palomino, who we bring on right now. Baboon is joining us again. Luis, it's been a long time since we saw you, since that fight against Trout last year. I know you had some injuries coming out of that, but is that what's kept you out almost a year now? Or was there other things? Was it just not being able to fight fighters that want to step up against a guy who's one of the best ever doing the BKFC? What's been the holds up and then getting you back in the squared circle?
Well, first of all, man, thank you for having me. And yeah, it's been quite way too long, and no injuries at all. I just been waiting. I've been waiting and asking, having my hand raised, waiting for my rematch, waiting for everything. But talking about the Aston Trout fight, I fought at 165 only for the simple reason that there was nothing else left for me at 155. I went up to 165 to make more money, to get bigger challenges, and I got the Trout fight. I didn't get my way. It didn't go my way that night. And I waited a whole entire year for that rematch at a weight class I don't belong in. I just truly do not belong in 165. I can barely hang on to the weight. It cost me to keep on to that weight, powerlifting, to eating the way I was eating. So I'm back to my natural habitat here, at 155, walk around 170 pounds light, easy. I have my head coach, Maha, right here with me, and Coach Mateo, even though he doesn't like to be called a coach, he's a businessman, but he's the one that put me on to Coach Maha. And, we're ready to go. We made a lot of changes in this camp. I don't make the same mistake twice. You know what I mean? So I had to make rearrangements. I had to get a big team behind me, a real team. And that's what I did. I went after. I got in contact with Mateo. Mateo took me in as one of his own. And he said, you know what, man, I can do things for you, but nothing like what my coach can do for you. So this is Coach Maga. This is Mateo's coach. And this is the reason why I have them all lined up, because this is my team now. I want everybody to know what's going on. But with the Boxer family, where only champions come out of.
Tell us about that. Tell us about the change and your mindset here in the training. I mean, obviously, what you had was working for a long time before that Trout fight. Undefeated, double champ in the BKFC. No one could beat you until, no one really could say, they beat you. Obviously, it was a decision. That's it's a close fight that can go either way. But what made you want to make the big change and build the team that you have built now around you?
Well, you know, I attracted a lot of people to my old gym, and I'm never going to point no fingers at nobody or anything like that. You know, there was a point in time that I didn't feel like I was improving anymore for quite a little time, and people were coming in where my attention was going elsewhere. You know, it's part of the reason why I was so cold in the trout fight, where, you know, my trainer was downstairs. I only had one trainer, you know, and I was upstairs alone, cold. If you look at the fight, I didn't break a sweat to the 4th round. And you don't have to make any excuses. It's facts are facts. So, you know, I needed to evolve. I needed to come out of my comfort zone. You know, when you're in a place for long enough, people respect you a little too much. Even your teammates will respect you too much. Even your coach will respect you a little too much. And, you know, they'll keep you in that comfort zone sometimes. So I had to, like, you know, one of the biggest things that I have that makes me who I am is I adapt, you know, and I adapt to circumstances. So I needed to put myself in a different environment where I'm being challenged. And that's when I got together with Mateo. Mateo put me on to Coach Maha, and it's been none but growth from there. All I've done is improve. Another thing is the personality of fighting, right? I'm an animal. I've always been known from the Gagey fights and everything in the past for war, looking for like head hunting, looking for knockouts. But I was holding a perfect record in BKFC. You know, as you mentioned, nobody in BKFC has defended a title 6 times. I defended it 6 times successfully. I'm the only 8-time world champion in BKFC history. You know what I mean? So, you know, I was protecting that, kind of like protecting that virginity. Well, it got popped. You know what I mean? So that other side of me, that animal, had to be reborn. And that's where Coach Maha and Mateo came in, where, you know, they brought that aggression back out of me, but under a crazy control, like controlled chaos. You know, that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, so basically, you know, through the time that Luis Palomino's been here at Boxer, you know, just to give you guys a little insight, here at Boxer we have, you know, multiple world champions that come out of here, like David Benavides recently just did his last 2 camps here, Guillermo Rigondeaux. There's a list of boxers and world champions that come out of this gym. And just adding Maha to the team, you know, he was one of my coaches back when I was getting ready for the Amateur World Championships, as I come from a boxing background. And he's, you know, the pedigree of fighters that comes from Russia, out of the USSR, is on a different level. So being able to bring a quality coach into this to work with Baboon, it's just taking him to a whole nother level, just because of the experience that this man has got to give to Baboon strategically, not just on the training side, but more as on the mental side, to be able to get him adapted in the ring to universal different styles. And that's what it's about. That's what it takes to become a world champion. It just comes down to being able to, you know, go against any style that's in front of you. And that's what he's given Baboon. He's giving him a sense of understanding, whether it's a southpaw, whether it's a tall guy, whether it's a small guy, a big guy, you name it. He's going to be able to adapt very quickly within the early rounds, and he'll be able to dominate with, you know, a knockout. And that's what he's aiming for this fight. He wants to come back on a level of the element of surprise, and to basically be that guy in BKFC that can just dominate and just shake the combat sports world up.
We're looking forward to seeing that. We've seen some great things from Baboon. We're seeing to see if he can do even better now with this new coaching staff and team behind him. Luis, before we let you go, we got about 15 seconds left. You're facing Howard H.G. Davis, a big guy, coming off a big win over Get Down Brown. What are you expecting with your fight against him?
Man, I expect nothing but fireworks. Look, from what I saw, you know, he's being groomed to be the next in the title for 155. And that's what I asked for. I asked, you know, I'm going to go back to my weight class. I'm going to go back to my weight class, and I'm going to reign supreme again, once again. So give me the top contender, which is him. And he's going to have to prove to himself, you know, how bad he really wants this, you know, because he's facing the 8-time world champion. You know what I mean? He's facing the best that ever did it in that weight class. And unfortunately for him, they just you guys made me wait too long. You made me wait too long, and it only made me more dangerous, more furious. So good luck to him. After this loss, he will grow from it.
It has been too long since we've seen Luis Palomino win the squared circle, and we'll see it again at the end of this month for the BKFC down in Hollywood, Florida.
Sixers, they tried to play 2 different things. They tried to play contender, and they tried to play protect Joel Embiid. It wasn't doing Joel Embiid any good. And this goes back to what I've talked about numerous times on this network. Why did they let him play in the first place? Why was he on the Olympic team? I mean, we looked at it last year in the playoffs against the Knicks. The damn kid was on one leg.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. Let's shift gears here, go a little glove boxing from bare knuckle boxing, and talk about the big fight we had in Brooklyn between Gervonta Davis, Tank Davis, versus Lamont Roach Jr. We love getting into the boxing here, mixing that in as well. Some great stuff that we've had over the last couple weeks. This one, a lot of controversy in this one, as it ends in a majority draw. That's not the controversy. We'll get into that in a second. Majority draw, 114 on two judges' scorecards. One judge had it for 113, 115 for Davis. Davis, of course, was a champ. Roach was trying to become a simultaneous champ in multiple divisions. Does not get that title, though, because of a bad call by the ref, in my opinion. Let's start from the beginning. Round one, you had Roach coming forward a lot. Not a lot of action early in this fight. Gervonta Davis, usually a guy who's a slow starter, likes to feel out, get his opponent's timing, likes to figure things out, and throws, big power later on. He's not a volume puncher. He's a power puncher, even at this smaller weight class. So Roach is coming forward early, not throwing a ton. I mean, nobody threw in the first round. There was 4 combined body punches that landed, 3 by Roach. He gets that round. Davis comes forward a little bit more in the second round. Roach keeps coming forward, but Davis throwing more in the second round, getting a little bit more into it. I thought he got that round, and, that it was a little bit more towards him with big punches, although if you look at the CompuBox numbers, it looks like Roach actually landed more, so I could have been wrong on that. Third round, these rounds were going back and forth early on. I thought Davis had a good third round. He started coming forward, started using the jab against Roach. Roach using his jab, but Davis getting bigger shots. And I thought Roach got a good left hook later on, but still I landed that one towards Davis. 4, I gave to Roach. Good shots off the break, especially at the clinch. 5, both guys throwing back and forth. We're starting to get some big, heavy shots thrown by both guys. I gave that one to Davis, so he's slightly up by 1 now. 6, I gave to Davis. Now he's up by 2. 7, I gave to Roach, back down to 1. 8, I thought for Roach, back down to tied. 9 is where it all is going to be, decided, because as we said, goes to a split draw. Later in the fight, I think a lot of people gave Tank Davis number 10. 11, 12, I think should have gone to Roach, although if you look at the official judges' scorecards, one of them gave it to Davis. I think that was a judge who scored it in the favor of Davis. 9 is the big one, because 9 is the one where Roach is landing some good shots. Still coming forward with just over a minute left. Lands a big right, then an uppercut, and then all of a sudden, you have Tank Davis take a knee. It wasn't right away off that right hand that Davis took the knee, but it was a little delayed. And then like 2 or 3 seconds, all of a sudden, Tank Davis takes a knee. Then gets up and runs over to the corner, puts his head through the ropes, and has his corner wipe his face with the towel. Now, when you get to after the fight, he talks about how he just had his hair done 2 days ago. A lot of these fighters, of course, when you're going to get certain hairstyles, keep it out of your face, you get it done right before the fight, so it's still in there. says they put some hair grease in there, and as the fight went on and he started sweating more, that grease got into his eyes, and it was an eye burning that made him stop for a second, not a punch by Roach. But guess what? This is fighting. There's no timeouts. So to me, you take a knee, I don't care if it's because the guy punched you or because a mosquito got in your eye or up your nose or in your ear. If you stop the fight, that's a knockdown for the other guy. Stoppage means you lose a point and they gain an advantage. The referee didn't call it that way. He told him afterwards, after he gets his face wiped, he comes back in, he says, hey, listen, if you go down to a knee, that should be ruled a knockdown. Then rule it a knockdown. But he doesn't rule it a knockdown. So because of that, not only does Roach not get the 10-8 round he deserved, but some of the judges, 2 of them, including one of the ones that had it tied, scored it for Tank Davis 10-9. Now, I think you're crazy as a judge, even if they don't rule a knockdown, to give a guy a winning round when he took a knee, took a timeout in the middle of the round, got his face wiped off illegally. There's no way he should win that round, even if the ref is blind enough to not call that a knockdown. But that is what happens. So because of that, if you look at the scorecards, the one that goes for Tank Davis, if that's flipped from a 10-9 for him to a 10-8 for Roach, that means Roach wins the fight. The one who scored it a draw but gave that round to Tank Davis, if you flip that, that's a 2-point win for Roach. And the one who called it a draw but gave that round to Roach, that's still an extra point that would get him the win. So he would have won unanimously on all 3 judges' scorecards if the ref knew what he was doing and called that a knockdown. Because I don't care if the guy threw a punch or did not. If you go to a knee and it's not guys getting tied up with their feet, if you're not ruling it a slip, that's a knockdown. That's a 10-8 round for Roach, and he should have been the champion. He got robbed in that fight. And there's, of course, calls for a rematch. There's a clause in the contract. We'll see if Tank Davis lives up to it. There were big plans for him to face Stevenson after this fight. But considering he didn't actually win it, either by, logic or the scorecards, I don't think you give him that fight. I think you have to rematch this fight against Roach and no excuses next time. And whoever wins that one, then they can go fight Stevenson. So very weird, moment in the fight. Gives us a very weird scoring ending. I think Roach got robbed, but hopefully we'll get some more action from these 2 guys in the future. When we come back, we're going to switch things up and talk about the PFL in the 2 heavy divisions for their tournaments coming up this April.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Possible that while every other state is trying to copy New York and get that 51% tax on sports betting, is it possible that New York will actually lower their taxes? That's surprising.
The question is, of course, what sports books could go there. I mean, we're already at 9 that are the biggest ones out there in the market. So, I mean, who are you really missing?
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome into the Combat Sports Report. Let's switch over to the PFL now, as we have finally learned the last two divisions that will be facing off in their tournament-style format this year, starting in April, and it is the light heavyweight and heavyweight divisions. We talked last week about who we thought could be possibly involved in them, as you know, they're looking at the different rosters for PFL and Bellator over the last couple of years, and seeing which guys we know wouldn't be involved because of other organizations that they have signed with and have announced things with, and who we knew was still around and maybe part of it. And let's break it down now as we have officially the rosters for the light heavyweight and heavyweight tournaments. First, light heavies, and one of those guys going to be involved is a guy we're going to talk to later on in the show, Phil Mr. Wonderful Davis, the former Division I college wrestler, former UFC and Bellator fighter, 24-7, won no contest in his career. Wins over guys like Yoel Romero, Lyoto Machida twice, Linton Vassell, King Mo, and Glover Teixeira. Haven't seen him in a while, though. Last time he fought was June 2023, and a split decision loss to Corey Anderson. He had won 2 fights before that in Bellator. Now he comes over to the PFL for the first time. He'll be fighting for them, and part of this tournament-style format that he knows very well from his time in Bellator. One of the other guys who's going to be trying to take him out is Rob Wilkinson, a guy who I believe was supposed to fight him last year. Unfortunately, that fight never materialized, but the 32-year-old Australian is 19-3 in his MMA career with 10 knockouts and 7 submissions, so he can beat you on the feet or the ground. He's fought in the UFC, the PFL, professional boxing, professional Muay Thai, won the 2022 PFL light heavyweight tournament, 8-0 with won no contest before losing his last fight in August to Yagshmirdov. So this guy was on a streak, on a roll, looking to become champion again in the PFL for the second time. Did not work out for him. Now he will look to do it again for a second time this year in this new bracket style. But definitely has a lot of experience, a lot of wins, and has done some great things and can win any which way. Another former champion going to be involved in this tournament is Antonio Carlos Jr., the 34-year-old Brazilian, former BJJ world champion. He's fought for the UFC and the PFL. He was a 2021 PFL light heavyweight tournament champion. 6-0 with 1 no contest in PFL before he lost to Polizzi last June by decision. He has 9 wins by decision of his 13 wins. So this is a guy who you can almost guarantee is going to go the distance, or at least over the total rounds when he fights in these tournament fights that he's going to match up in. So he has a lot of experience. He's beaten some top-level guys, knows what it's like to fight for a title, and now will try to do it again 4 years later after he won it as he gets back into this light heavyweight tournament. We also have Sullivan Cauley, the 20-year-old from the U.S., former Bellator fighter who is 6-1 overall in his MMA career with 5 by knockout. So this guy's going to stand and bang. He's not going to look to take you down. He's not going to look to smother you. He's going to look to finish you, but has not fought since August 2023 when he beat Hamaz Salim. So who knows what the ring rust is going to be like in his first fight. Maybe it takes him a little while to get going in the early on, even though he is a guy who likes to stand and trade. Simeon Powell will also be part of his tournament. The 26-year-old Brit, 10-1 overall in his MMA career, has fought for the PFL in Europe, then moved over to Bellator, now moves back to Bellator, back to the PFL, I'm sorry, and he will come in there and try to prove why he is a nice up-and-comer in the MMA world and try to make a name for himself against some of these former champs. Last fight, he beat Rafael Javier last September by split decision, so that win over him by Rafael over Xavier. It's going to be a nice stepping stone into this tournament, but he's going to face some guys who have a lot more experience against the best of the best. So we'll see what he can do now at 26 as he gets into the meat grinder that this tournament is going to be. Marcelo Nunez, a 36-year-old Brazilian, is also going to be part of this 11-2 career record. Fought for the World Series of Fighting and a PFL before being part of this tournament. Most of his wins are by submission. 8 of his 11 victories by submission. So you got to watch out for this guy going for the takedown. He is a guy that's going to take you down and try to get the sub in any which way, grab an arm, grab a leg, choke you out. So it's going to be all about standing and trading with him, keeping it on the feet if you want to defeat Marcelo Nunez. Carl Moore, the 33-year-old Irish fighter, is going to be part of this. The 12-3 MMA record, mostly Bellator, is his experience. 4-1 in Bellator in his pro MMA career. Last fought March 2024 against Corey Anderson. So another guy who's faced some tough, stiff competition in Anderson, but still also, maybe early in the upper echelon as far as some of these fighters in experience. Has some great fights under his belt. Trains with a great team over there in Ireland, in Cavanagh. So, he's training with some of the best over there. We'll see if he can beat some of the best in this division for the PFL. And last but not least, Carl Albrechtsen, the Swede, the 31-year-old, is going to be part of this 14-6 MMA record. 7 of those 14 wins by knockout, so he's going to want to trade. Lost 3 of his last 4, did the former Bellator and Risen fighter. Had a bunch of canceled fights last year in the PFL before losing in another fight league last November, so haven't seen him at this level of competition in a while. But he is one that wants to stand and trade, but it might not go his way, as we've seen over the last bunch of fights that he has had here with Bellator before now making the switch over to the PFL. So if you're looking at this roster, obviously probably the top 3 guys, probably the first 3 that we named in this one: Wilkinson, Carlos Jr., and Phil Davis. Guys who are former champions or have fought 4 championships and fought, former champions themselves, who have, some strong, well-rounded game. Davis can grapple you, take you to the ground, as can Wilkinson. He can submit you. Jr. maybe a little bit less well-rounded than the other guys, as he has a lot of submission wins, but all of them can be dangerous standing and trading as well. Now let's get to the big boys, the heavyweights. This one has a lot of an Eastern flair to it, if you will, as a lot of Russians, a lot of guys from over the pond here fighting against just really one U.S. fighter here. So it's going to be heavily in the favor of someone overseas getting this belt in the heavyweight contest. And that will start, of course, with Valentin Moldavsky, the 33-year-old Russian, risen Bellator and PFL fighter, former Bellator heavyweight champion briefly. He won that interim title. He's got wins over Tim Johnson, Linton Vassell, and the formerly mentioned Albrechtsen, who's going to be, of course, light heavyweight. But Tim Johnson, Linton Vassell, part of this tournament, as we'll get to in a little bit. 1-1 last year with getting a second win against Vassell in their trilogy, second loss against Vassell in their trilogy fight. They fought 3 times. Vassell has won the last 2. That was by split decision last June. You also have Poya Romani, the 32 Iranian fighter, 4-0 in his career. Very early in his MMA career, but making a big name for himself online. You can go find him on social media. One of those guys that'll, just go to random places and say, okay, who wants to take me on? And see if anybody can take him down, and people not having a lot of success. And we'll see if the fighters in this heavyweight tournament have better success. He's coming from outside the PFL, and, he will get his first taste of big-time competition now when he faces off some of these names in the heavyweight division for the PFL. Oleg Popov, the 33-year-old Russian who we last saw fighting for the PFL last year in that title fight that he lost to Golstov in the finals. Lost by submission, 19-2. That was only his second loss in his career. He's fought for M1 and Bellator as well. Has wins over Linton Vassell in the semis last year. He's going to try to get redemption here and get the title that he sought last year and could not retrieve. Alexander Romanov, the Moldovan 34-year-old, 18-3 in his MMA career. Coming over from the UFC, he was 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Half of his wins are by submission, but also has 6 by KO. So a guy that can beat you on the feet or the ground, which is also, always exceedingly rare in the heavyweight division. But not having much success in his last couple fights. We'll see if he has better success here in the PFL as he joins this tournament. Tim Johnson, who we mentioned before, last we saw the 39-year-old from the U.S., only U.S. fighter in this one. We saw him as a late replacement against Nemkov in January over in Saudi Arabia. Lost that one by rear naked choke in the second round. Former UFC, Bellator, and PFL fighter. He's got losses against Moldavsky and Vassell. So, 2 guys in this tournament that have the upper edge against the aging vet here in Tim Johnson. Another longtime vet, Linton Vassell, as we've mentioned his name a couple times, has fought a lot of guys in this tournament. The 41-year-old out of the UK, 25-10, lots of fights under his belt. He's fought for the Bellator and PFL, has beaten Moldavsky, has beaten Johnson, lost to Golstov, and of course the champion Popov, who won that belt in 2024. That was the semifinal fight that he lost there, that Popov ended up getting into the finals on. We also have Sergey Bilostienki, the 29-year-old from Russia, 13-3, 8 wins by KO, and Abraham Babili, 29-year-old from England, 5-1 from won his first 5 fights before losing his last one. Who's the ones you got to watch out for this one? I say Romanovsky, Moldavsky, and Popov. Those are the 3 that I'll keep my eye on when this tournament starts for the PFL.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Off of the combine this weekend, there's been lots of anonymous sources and position coaches and all these things that sat down in interviews with him. A lot of teams allegedly don't see him as a first-round pick.
Their big mouth that thinks they can do it either. They're embarrassing themselves. They all think they're so smart, everybody in this business. You're all a bunch of drips. Honestly, you don't know who's going anywhere.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid, and we're going to talk about some lights out extreme fighting right now. They got a big card coming up later this month, towards the end of the month, and one of the featured fighters going to be on that card is Ashley Thiner. Whiplash Thiner going to be joining us right now on the show. Ashley, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it. I hope things are going well as you get ready for this big fight. Let's talk about, for the people who don't know you, let's talk about how you got here. This is only going to be your second pro fight. So for you, you had a big Muay Thai background. A long amateur career there. It was almost like 6 years that you were fighting amateur MMA. So, what was the transition like for you between Muay Thai coming over to, MMA being your primary career? And, what was the long transition being an amateur to a pro?
Absolutely. I think the transition helped me in a lot of ways. I think it laid the groundwork for what's going to be a very successful professional career. I think a lot of people go pro a little too fast, in my opinion, because you need reps, right? That's the biggest thing when you're going into these high level fights. The experience level you can't simulate. So I have 38 total fights. One of them is professional, and then the other 37 were amateur. That being said, I think 6 of them were MMA, 5 or 6 of them were MMA, and the rest were Muay Thai. I started fighting at 20 years old. I started training at 19, but I fought about a year later. So I've been fighting for about 11 years competitively, and I think it really gives me the edge when I walk in, because over those 40 fights, you dial in each time something different, and whether that be diet or mentality or how you warm up a certain way or how you stretch or how you train, everything contributes. And so each little step that I took forward or learned from, each step that I failed at, right? Because there were failures among those. I didn't win all 38 fights. I think I lost like 8 or 9 of them. So there were failures along the way, and I think failure is an important part of success because your mindset completely changes when you learn how to lose. I think that was extremely important on my way up, and it's going to be very contributory in my professional career as I climb the ranks, because I've already defeated monsters in my amateur career, and now I get to go defeat monsters in my pro career. So coming in as an underdog in situations, I know how to do. Coming in as a champion and defending my belts, I know how to do. Regardless of what is presented to me, I will be prepared.
And we can see that preparation, all the work that you've put in, on the social media that you have out there on your Instagram. See you training, see how important your team is to you. How do you think your Muay Thai background really helps you as you make this, transition to MMA being your full-time career now, and that's your main focus? Do you think that style translates a lot better than some? Plenty of people come from jiu-jitsu where they might not have the striking, or the wrestling where they need the ground game more. Do you think, being in the Muay Thai, working the clinch, being in tough situations where maybe you don't have the space you want, you got to, work in tight, or, you have someone with those long legs that throw those big kicks. Do you think that kind of striking has prepared you better for an MMA career than maybe someone coming from a different background?
Yeah. I got the kicks, right? I have the range. I think one of the things that it teaches you more than anything is range control. So I'm pretty tall. I'm 5'8", which is pretty tall for a straw weight, especially at 115. Dakota Ditcheva is 5'8", and she's at 125, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, she's so tall," and I'm like, "Yeah, but I am 115, and I'm like the same height, so that's cool." I think Muay Thai, the competition level for amateur Muay Thai is actually at a professional level. And so you learn how to be a pro pretty early. After about 10 or 12 fights, there are a lot of opportunities to fight professionals as an amateur, which I've also done internationally. And the travel is something that I'm accustomed to. When I'm not traveling, like for this particular fight, it's only 2 hours away, I feel spoiled because I get to just drive to the venue. I get to sleep in my own bed if I want to. That's a luxury that I usually don't have because we're flying all over the world. But I think Muay Thai prepares you for getting hit. I think it prepares you for getting tired. And I think it's a better look because every fight starts on its feet. You have to get to the ground at some point. But to get there, you're going to have to get past my striking. So I would say that my Muay Thai has absolutely adequately prepared me to go into these high-level fights with the really little gloves, which I love because I have the power behind my punches to ward people off and keep them at a distance.
And you talked about coming from the lows of the lows at points in your career. I'm sure one of those was, last October when you had your knee injury. How have you recovered from that? How are you feeling like that? After you come off, you win in Bellator, your first professional fight, you get the great win, and then you got to sit out with that injury. How are you feeling? How's the recovery? And, both mentally and physically from that. And how do you feel now as you are getting back into this fight for the first time, getting back in that cage to do battle again?
Yeah, so that was hard, obviously, because I think 2 weeks prior had come off my big finish in Bellator, my first professional fight. And then I flew out to Australia to corner one of my friends, Selena Flores, for her WBC title belt for Muay Thai, professional title belt. So she's now a double world champion. She's defended her belt successfully in Mexico a few weeks ago. I was there too. And 2 days after I got back from Australia, I was doing jiu-jitsu in a comp class and just boom, girl fell on my knee popped. And my MCL was torn, my hamstring was partially torn. And initially, obviously, it's a jarring effect because you just want to hit the ground running when you come off a big win like that. And that's what I intended on doing. I was already back in training 2 days after I got back from Australia. I was ready to go. I was jet lagged, but I didn't care. I was there. And it's jarring. Yeah.
I'm sure it is. And now you get back in for the first time against Malden. Lights Out Extreme Fighting 23 Saturday, March 22nd. A ground fighter for her, so you got to keep it in your wheelhouse, keep it on the feet, I'm sure. I'm sure you got your game plan for doing that. We look forward to seeing you execute that, hopefully to perfection. Ashley Thiner, thanks so much for joining us. Watch Whiplash Thiner coming up on Lights Out Extreme Fighting later this month on Lights Out Extreme app and all the different ways you can watch their great organization.
Off of the combine this weekend, there's been lots of anonymous sources and position coaches and all these things that sat down in interviews with him. A lot of teams allegedly don't see him as a first-round pick.
Their big mouth that thinks they can do it either. They're embarrassing themselves. They all think they're so smart, everybody in this business. You're all a bunch of drips. Honestly, you don't know who's going anywhere.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Possible that while every other state is trying to copy New York and get that 51% tax on sports betting, is it possible that New York will actually lower their taxes? That's surprising.
The question is, of course, well, what sports books could go there? I mean, we're already at 9 that are the biggest ones out there in the market. So, I mean, who are you really missing?
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Remember when everyone was upset about NIL? You know what NIL did? Make sure Cooper Flag wasn't playing with the G League Ignite. That's good for us. That's good for college basketball. When the best players are actually playing college basketball.
You're going to get battle tested. And it doesn't matter, Kevin, if you're at home or on the road. If you don't come ready to play in the SEC, you're going home with an L.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than game time decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on Sports.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report as we continue to break down the PFL, the tournaments, the divisions they keep announcing. We keep getting more and more names that we love to see out there and love to see fight. One of those guys that we're going to see in the light heavyweight tournament is Phil Davis, Mr. Wonderful. Any combat sports fan who has been watching over the last 15 years or so has seen plenty of Phil Davis's fights. Always exciting, always great to watch. And we bring him now on the show. Phil, thanks so much for your time. Congratulations being part of this tournament with the PFL. How excited are you to be part of this new age for the PFL, the new tournament system, and the way they're going to be running things this season?
Super pumped to be in this tournament. Sounds like it's going to be high pace and a lot of fun. It's going to be exciting.
Now, you are a guy who, of course, fought in the UFC, fought in Bellator, so you have experience with this format and in the Bellator. All the times that you fought for them, working your way up a lot of times. How do you feel like that maybe prepares you a little better than some of your opponents who might not be used to this style of format, this bracket style, win and move on, lose and you're out type of situation?
I don't necessarily know that having done it before makes you definitely better for it. It comes down to fighting style. And it comes down to how much punishment you take in each fight. And that's kind of one of those things that's just constant based on who you are as a fighter. So I think the tournament style suits me and suits my strengths. I like to finish fight, and I like to be in good position to, take the least amount of damage as possible. So I love it.
Yeah, you talk about your style there, the wrestling style with the kind of unorthodox striking. This has been a problem for a lot of your opponents over the years. You've had a lot of big fights against some big names, have some great wins on your record. How much do you feel that fighting style that you have had has let you have this longevity in the sport that, can take people out pretty quickly if you're not careful? The way that you fight, the way that you avoid those big shots, with the takedowns and with the angles that you come at. How do you think that has helped prolong your career so far?
Well, I think you just answered it in the question. Yeah, no, I think definitely not having taken a lot of big hits early on in my career has allowed me to be very competitive later on. So, I get hurt, little things, but I always say I'm blessed. God gives me the best injuries. Nothing major, no surgeries, no broken bones. So I've been blessed. So here I am.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing you back in there. It's been a while since we've seen you in the cage. That last fight, obviously, that we saw was the Corey Anderson fight back in 2023. What's the reason for the layoff? Was it just that things didn't come together when you tried to make some fights? Were there any injuries you had to, nurse and heal up? What was going on over these last couple of years? Why we unfortunately didn't get to see you recently get in there and apply your trade?
I wish I knew.
Sometimes just the way things go, and I'm glad that we're getting you in there now. Of course, there are some great names in this tournament that we're going to see, some former PFL champions, some guys like Antonio Carlos Jr., Rob Wilkinson. You got other fighters like Carl Moore, Simeon Powell, who's a great up-and-comer. So there's going to be a lot of interesting opponents that you could fight. For you, a guy who has fought the best of the best, is there any names that really kind of pique your interest that you hope you get to see at some point?
I hate to be this way, but I just love fighting. I don't really care who shows up. I'm not going to train any different. I'm not going to do anything special for your fight camp. I'm just going to show up. I'm going to train hard. I train my style. I train my style 24/7, 365 days a year. And no matter who gets in that cage, I bring my style into the cage. And I just love to fight. I love to fight them all. If God made them, I'll fight them.
Well, we love watching you fight. We can't wait to see you back in there again. We talked about how you have, a long history with a lot of the biggest names in this division. What's some of your fondest memories so far of your career? Is it, wins over some of the big names you have, like, Machida, who you beat multiple times, that nobody could beat that guy even once a lot of times, let alone multiple times, Romero, King Mo, Glover Teixeira. Which are some of your favorite fights that you've had over your storied career?
It's weird because I'm pretty good friends with all the guys. Most of them, most of the guys I fight. Outside of that cage, we have a lot of respect for each other, and every fight is its own victory. Even some of the ones where I didn't win, I don't know that anyone is necessarily more special to me, other than my very first fight on the big stage against Brian Stan.
Well, that was a great fight against the All-American. You've had plenty of those since in your career, Phil Davis. We look forward to seeing you as one of the big names in this light heavyweight tournament for the PFL this season. Thank you so much for joining us, and can't wait to see you get back in there in April.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It's made every match so much more enjoyable to watch because you don't get the stinkers, right?
Right. It goes back to these guys being smart. They figured out that if I've got the hammer in my back pocket and I don't relinquish it, we can just play them straight up and win. They figured that out. And so it's like, all right, now credit to the people at TGL. Like, no, we need to fix this because the hammer can change the match. And since we fixed it, you're not out of it.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Off of the combine this weekend, there's been lots of anonymous sources and position coaches and all these things that sat down in interviews with him. A lot of teams allegedly don't see him as a first-round pick.
Their big mouth that thinks they can do it either. They're embarrassing themselves. They all think they're so smart, everybody in this business. You're all a bunch of drips. Honestly, you don't know who's going anywhere.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.